Welcome to the deep dive. Today, today we're looking at something pretty different. We're going to be diving into a 30-day challenge that's all about getting better at English, becoming more fluent. And you know what I really liked about this challenge? It's not like the usual stuff you see, with all the grammar rules and memorizing tons of words.
Yeah, it's really refreshing.
It's more about like making English a part of your everyday life.
Absolutely. And what I find really interesting is how this challenge breaks down this big goal of fluency into these smaller steps,
Right.
things you can actually do. Because let's face it, most people don't have hours and hours to study every day,
Right.
right? So it's all about fitting English into your normal routine, making it a habit, something you do naturally.
And that's so important, isn't it? Making it a habit instead of a chore.
Totally.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics of this challenge.
Yeah, let's break it down.
There are 5 main tasks, each one focusing on a different part of fluency. And the first one, this is what really caught my eye, is watching 2 English movies.
2 whole movies.
Over the whole 30 days, yeah. And I have to admit, when I first saw that, I was like, whoa, 2 movies, who's got time for that? But the challenge actually, it addresses that right away.
Right. It's not like you have to watch them all at once.
Exactly.
The idea is to break them up into these smaller 20-minute chunks, like watching an episode of a show.
Oh, that's a good way to put it, like a web series or something.
Exactly. So you could watch a bit during lunch while you're making dinner, whenever you have a little bit of downtime. It's about making it fit into your life, not the other way around.
I love that. Okay, so that's movies. Now let's talk about vocabulary, because that's usually the part that people kind of dread, right?
Yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming.
But here's where this challenge gets really smart. It's not about memorizing a whole dictionary. The goal is to learn just 20 new words over the 30 days.
That's doable.
Right. And even more important than just learning them is to actually use them.
Yes. Put them into practice. That's how they really stick.
Exactly. And to help you do that, the challenge suggests something pretty simple, but super effective. Write down the word, its definition, and then come up with 2 example sentences using that word.
It's a classic technique, but it really works.
It does. It's like when you write something down, it kind of cements it in your brain,
Yeah, you're not just passively reading it. You're actively engaging with it.
You're owning it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got movies, we've got vocabulary. Now let's get to the part that I think makes a lot of people nervous, the speaking part.
The heart of fluency, right?
Yes. And this challenge recommends something called mirror talk for 10 minutes every day.
Oh.
Now, when I first read that, I'll be honest, I pictured myself having like a deep conversation with my reflection.
I know, right? It sounds a little strange at first.
But it's actually not about that at all. It's a really cool way to practice speaking and become more aware of how you're communicating.
What I find fascinating about mirror talk is that it goes beyond just like pronunciation. You're also paying attention to your body language, your facial expressions, your eye contact, all those things that are so important when you're talking to someone.
It's like all the nonverbal stuff that we don't always think about.
Exactly. And the mirror gives you this instant feedback, You can see how you come across and make adjustments.
It's like having your own personal communication coach right there in your bathroom.
I love that.
Okay, so we've covered movies, vocabulary speaking. What's next?
Let's talk about reading. The challenge aims for 100 pages in 30 days. And what I really appreciate is that it doesn't tell you what to read.
That's great because everyone has different tastes, right?
Exactly. So you could read novels, nonfiction articles, blogs, whatever you enjoy.
Even just rereading a favorite book counts.
Absolutely. The point is to immerse yourself in written English. And as you read, you're naturally absorbing all these grammar structures, vocabulary, sentence patterns, without even realizing it.
It's like your brain is just soaking it all up in the background.
Right, and that passive learning is really powerful.
I can definitely see that. Okay, so we've got movies, vocabulary speaking, reading, and now we come to day 30, the final day of the challenge. And you might expect some big grand finale.
Yeah, some big test or something.
Right, but actually it's something much more introspective. It's about self-reflection.
Taking a step back and looking at how far you've come.
Exactly. And it's not just about celebrating your successes, which is important, of course.
Right.
But it's also about acknowledging the areas where you still want to improve.
Yeah, identifying those areas where you might need a little more work. And that's really key for personalized learning.
How so?
Well, by taking the time to recognize your strengths and weaknesses, you're basically taking ownership of your language learning journey.
You're becoming more aware of your own learning process.
Exactly. It's about figuring out what worked well for you, what needs more attention, and how to adjust your approach moving forward.
So it's like a constant cycle of learning, practicing, and then reflecting and refining.
Exactly, and that's how you keep growing and improving.
I love that. So it's not just about reaching some end goal, it's about the journey itself.
The journey is the destination.
Well said. Now, I know some people might be listening to this and thinking, wow, this sounds like a lot. Watching movies, reading books, daily speaking practice, it can seem a little daunting. But what I find so brilliant about this challenge is that it's really designed to fit into your life.
It's not about making huge changes to your schedule.
Right. It's about those small, consistent efforts that you make over time. And that's what ultimately leads to progress, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's like any skill you want to develop, whether it's playing an instrument or learning to cook.
Or training for a marathon.
Exactly. You don't start by running 26 miles on your first day. You build up to it gradually.
You start with shorter runs, and you slowly increase your stamina.
And language learning is the same way. It's about building those language muscles over time through regular practice.
I love that analogy. Now, this challenge is specifically for English fluency, but do you think the same principles could apply to learning any language?
Oh, absolutely. The core ideas here, the consistent practice, the active learning, the self-reflection, those are universal.
They're the foundation of language learning no matter what language you're tackling.
Exactly. So whether you're learning Spanish, Mandarin, Swahili, whatever it is, the same principles apply. It's all about finding what worked best for you and making it a part of your routine.
That's so encouraging to hear, especially for anyone out there who might be feeling intimidated by the idea of learning a new language. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the 30-day fluency challenge, what do you think is the most valuable takeaway for our listeners? What's the one thing that really stands out to you as being key to unlocking fluency?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's the focus on holistic development.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this challenge recognizes that fluency isn't just about memorizing words or grammar rules. It's about immersing yourself in the language through all these different activities.
Right. You're watching movies, you're reading, you're learning new words, you're practicing speaking, and you're even reflecting on your progress.
Exactly. It's a comprehensive approach that tackles language learning from all angles.
And that's what makes it so effective, right?
I think so. It's like you're creating this little world of English around yourself.
A mini immersion environment right in your own home.
I like that.
Now, of course, every language learner is different. What might be easy for one person could be really challenging for another. So it's important to remember that this challenge is more like a framework.
It's not a set of strict rules.
Exactly. You can and should adapt it to your own needs and learning style.
Find what works best for you and make it your own.
Okay, so let's say someone's feeling inspired and ready to take on this 30-day fluency challenge. What advice would you give them? Where should they focus their energy when they're first starting out?
Well, first and foremost, I would say set realistic goals. Don't try to do too much too soon.
Don't overwhelm yourself.
Right. It's much better to start small and gradually increase the intensity of your practice as you gain confidence.
That's such good advice. And I think it's equally important to celebrate those small victories along the way. Don't get so focused on the end goal that you forget to acknowledge the progress you're making.
Oh, absolutely. Give yourself credit for the effort you're putting in.
Because every step forward is a step closer to fluency.
Exactly. And remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
It's a journey.
And there will be days when you feel motivated and days when you feel discouraged. The key is to just keep going.
Don't give up.
Right. Remember why you started this journey in the first place and focus on the joy of learning.
The joy of connecting with the world in a new way.
Exactly. Because ultimately, fluency is about so much more than just knowing the words and grammar. It's about opening up new possibilities for yourself.
It's about expanding your horizons.
Beautifully said. So for our listeners who are feeling inspired to try this 30-day challenge, what do you think would be the most rewarding part of the experience? What are you most excited to gain?
That's a tough one. There are so many benefits. But I think for many people, it's that sense of accomplishment that comes with achieving fluency.
Being able to hold a conversation with ease, understand native speakers.
Express yourself confidently. It's an amazing feeling. And it can have such a positive impact on your life.
Both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the new opportunities it opens up for travel, for work, for connecting with people from all over the world.
The world becomes your oyster.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious, what aspect of this challenge is resonating most with you personally? Is it the movie, watching the vocabulary, building the mirror talk? What's piquing your interest the most?
You know, it's funny you ask that. As we've been talking, I've been realizing that each of these tasks, while they seem simple on the surface, they actually tap into different cognitive processes.
Well, that's interesting. Tell me more. Well, for example, the movie watching it helps you attune your ear to the natural rhythm and flow of spoken English. You know how native speakers actually talk?
Right, right. You're picking up on the nuances of pronunciation, intonation, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And then the vocabulary building, it's like you're expanding your toolkit of words.
Giving you more tools to express yourself with precision.
Precisely. And then there's the mirror talk, which, as we discussed before, it helps you become more aware of your nonverbal communication.
Your body language, your facial expressions, all of that.
Right. And all of these elements combined, they contribute to overall fluency.
It's like you're putting together a puzzle.
I love that analogy. Each piece is important.
And then that self-reflection on day 30, that's like you're stepping back and admiring the completed puzzle.
Yes. You see how far you've come, celebrate your achievements, and identify the areas where you want to keep working.
So it's not just about the end result, it's about the process of getting there.
Exactly. And what strikes me is that this challenge, while it's simple in structure, it's actually really nuanced in its impact.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not just about learning English, it's about developing a growth mindset.
Embracing the learning process.
Yes. Challenging yourself to step outside of your comfort zone. And those are skills that go way beyond language learning.
They're life skills.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity, a willingness to experiment.
To try new things and see what happens.
And that's what makes language learning so exciting, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a constant journey of discovery.
You're constantly pushing your boundaries, expanding your horizons.
And isn't that what we all crave, ultimately? To grow, to learn, to connect with the world in new and meaningful ways.
I couldn't agree more. And language is such a powerful tool for doing just that.
It truly is. Well, I think this has been a fantastic deep dive into this 30-day fluency challenge. I'm feeling really inspired, and I hope our listeners are too. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yes, actually. I have a final thought to leave you with as you embark on your own fluency journey. Remember that language is a living, breathing thing.
It's dynamic. It's always evolving.
Exactly. And it reflects the incredible diversity of human experiences. So embrace that fluidity, enjoy the journey, and never stop exploring the infinite possibilities that language holds.
Beautifully said. Well, that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. It really is a journey, right? And like any journey, it's going to have, its ups and downs.
So true. And I think some people listening might be thinking, okay, this is a lot. Movies, books, talking to the mirror. It can feel kind of overwhelming. But what's so cool about this challenge is that it's made to fit into your life. You don't have to completely rearrange your schedule.
Exactly. The tasks are all like little bite-sized pieces, right? You can squeeze them in throughout your day. Like on a busy day, maybe you just watch one 20-minute chunk of a movie or learn one new word while you're on the bus.
Right. It's those small, consistent efforts that really add up.
Consistency is key.
It's not about being perfect every day.
No, it's about showing up and doing a little bit each day, even if it's just for a few minutes.
So it's like training for a marathon,
Exactly. You wouldn't try to run 26 miles on your first day.
No way.
You start small and you build up your stamina over time.
And language learning is the same way. It's about building those language muscles.
Strengthening your fluency one step at a time.
I love that. Now, this challenge is all about English, but I'm curious, do you think these principles could be applied to learning any language?
Absolutely. The core ideas are universal, consistent practice, active learning, self-reflection.
Those are the building blocks of language acquisition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whether you're learning Spanish, Mandarin, Swahili, the same principles apply.
It's about finding what works for you and making it a habit.
Make it a part of your life.
That's great to hear, especially for anyone who might be feeling intimidated by learning a new language. So as we wrap up this deep dive into this 30-day challenge, what do you think is the most valuable takeaway for our listeners? What really stands out to you as the key to becoming fluent?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's the emphasis on holistic development.
Holistic development.
Yeah, this challenge recognizes that fluency is about more than just memorizing vocabulary and grammar rules. It's about immersing yourself in the language in all sorts of ways.
So like we were saying, watching movies, reading, learning new words, practicing speaking.
Exactly. And reflecting on your progress. It's about approaching language learning from all sides.
It's like you're creating this little English bubble around yourself.
Yes. And by doing that, you're training your brain to think in English, to understand English, to speak English.
It's like creating a mini immersion experience right in your own home.
I love that. A
Yeah.
mini immersion experience.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. Everyone learns differently.
Right.
What might be super easy for one person could be a real struggle for someone else. So this challenge, it's not like a one-size-fits-all thing.
Right. It's more like a framework, a
Yeah.
starting point.
Exactly. And you could adapt it to fit your own needs and learning style.
Make it your own.
Okay, so let's say someone is feeling inspired and they want to try this challenge. What advice would you give them as they're getting started?
Well, I think the most important thing is to set realistic goals.
Yeah, don't try to do too much at once.
Exactly. Start small and gradually increase the difficulty as you get more comfortable.
And don't forget to celebrate those small victories along the way.
Yes. Acknowledge your progress and give yourself credit for the effort you're putting in.
Because every little step counts.
And remember, language learning, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's a journey.
There will be times when you feel super motivated and times when you feel frustrated. But the key is to just keep going.
Don't give up.
Remember why you started learning English in the first place. Focus on the joy of learning, the joy of connecting with new people and new cultures.
Because ultimately, fluency is about so much more than just words and grammar. It's about opening up new possibilities for yourself.
It's about expanding your horizons.
So for our listeners who are thinking about taking on this challenge, what do you think is the most rewarding part? What are you most excited for them to experience?
Well, I think for many people, it's that feeling of accomplishment that comes with achieving fluency.
Like imagine being able to hold a conversation effortlessly, understand native speakers, express yourself with confidence.
Exactly. It's an amazing feeling, and it can open so many doors for you.
In your personal life, your professional life, and every aspect of your life.
Absolutely. And it can also open up new opportunities for travel, for work, for making connections with people from all over the world.
It really does make the world your oyster. Now, I'm curious, what part of this challenge is speaking to you the most? Is it the movie, watching the vocabulary, the mirror talk? What's piquing your interest?
You know, it's funny, as you're talking about this, I'm realizing each one of these tasks, while they seem really simple, like on the surface, they each kind of use a different part of your brain,
Yeah.
different mental processes.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, like the movies, for example, they help you get used to hearing English spoken naturally.
Right, like how native speakers actually talk.
Exactly. You start picking up on the rhythm, the intonation, the little nuances that make spoken English sound natural.
Makes sense.
And then the vocabulary building, that's all about expanding your word bank.
Giving you more options, more tools to express yourself clearly.
Precisely. And then the mirror talk, which we talked about before, it helps you become more aware of how you're communicating non-verbally.
All the stuff beyond just the words, like your body language, your expressions.
Right. And all of these things together, they all play a role in developing fluency.
So it's like each task is a piece of the puzzle.
I love that. A fluency puzzle.
And then that self-reflection on day 30, that's when you take a step back and you can see the whole picture.
You see how all the pieces fit together.
Exactly. You celebrate how far you've come.
Yeah.
You can see where you want to improve. It's really cool.
And what's really neat is that this challenge, it's so simple, but it has such a big impact.
In what way?
Well, it's not just about learning English. It's also about, developing that growth mindset.
Being open to learning new things.
Yes. And challenging yourself, stepping outside of your comfort zone. Those are skills that are helpful in all areas of life.
They're not just language skills, they're life skills.
Exactly. It's about being curious, being willing to experiment, to try new things and see what happens.
And that's what makes language learning so much fun, right?
It really is. It's a journey of discovery.
You're always pushing your boundaries, learning new things.
And connecting with the world in new ways.
And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? To grow, to learn, to connect with the world around us.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think this has been an amazing deep dive into this 30-day fluency challenge.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
I'm feeling inspired. I hope our listeners are too. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
Yes, actually. One last thing I want to leave you with as you're thinking about your own language learning journey. Remember that language, it's not static.
It's not like a set of rules carved in stone.
Exactly. Language is alive. It's constantly evolving and changing.
It's a reflection of all the amazing different cultures and experiences in the world.
Precisely. So embrace that fluidity, enjoy the journey, and never stop exploring all the amazing possibilities that language has to offer.
Beautifully said. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
It was a pleasure.